In this video, we want to demonstrate how you can take an image, bring it into Carveco, and create vectors. You'll hear me use the term vectors in geometry interchangeably because different programs call these lines different names. So in Carveco, they call them vectors. In AutoCAD, they call them geometry. And so we're going to demonstrate how to make that happen. We're also going to demonstrate how to save your Carveco file and how to export the vectors from Carveco out of Carveco as their own standalone file. So the first thing we want to do is we want to log into box.com, and we want to go to box.com, and then we'll log in. Of course, you log in using your login information. I log in using my login information. Now, of course, my box.com is going to have a lot more folders than you have. Look at my Reed Custer folder. It has 1,800 files. My school related has 2,700 files. So you're just going to have orientation to technology, or you might have STEM, or you might have CAD CAM 1 or 2, or whatever class you're taking from me. But you want to go to where you saved your image, and from the previous video we saved this weave image, and right now it's stored in the virtual environment. To re-access that, we have to right click on it and go to download. Okay, I can also click on it and go to download. Either way. Okay, so we'll just do it this way. It's now downloaded. I'm going to open it, and here it is. Now I can go through the effort of, coming up and finding where the save as is, but I don't want to do that. I want to go down here to my folder, and I want to go to my downloads, and here it is right there. So I'm going to minimize my box.com, and I'm going to drag my weave image back out onto the desktop. And the reason we're doing that is, unlike my desktop, where I'm the only person that uses this computer, you're at a computer where lots of students use it, and so you always have to keep your desktop cleaned off. So every time you're done using your computer for the day, you want to drop anything you've created into the trash. Of course, after you've loaded it into box.com. Okay, so the reason we do that is because if you're not an expert computer user, all of these additional files you see up here can really get in the way and be confusing for the novice user. So you always want to make sure you're cleaning your desktop off at the end of each class, or the end of when you're done using that particular computer. So I have my image. The next thing I want to do is I want to open Carveco. Carveco is this gold and black and white sea. The best way to open a program is to right click on it and go to open. And the reason for that is this. A lot of times you'll see people, they'll double click with the left mouse button, they'll double click on the icon. And if it doesn't come open right away, they double click it again. And if it doesn't open, they double click it again. And the reason it's not opening is because sometimes there are processes going on in the background of your computer, and it's not ready to let you use it yet. But you don't realize that because you don't see that happening. And so what ends up happening is, depending on how many times they clicked on that icon, now once the computer starts to load that software, it's loading it as many times as you clicked on that icon. And I've seen students where they've clicked on something 15 times, and they're wondering why it's taking 20 minutes to bring that software up. And so it's much better to right click and go to open. It creates less problems for you because we tend to be impatient. So here's my Carveco. I'm maximizing it. Come on, there we go. And so that's the software. Now, to start with, I'm going to keep it minimized. And the reason for that is I want to be able to see my image. There are a number of ways to drop an image into Carveco, but the easiest way is just to grab the image, left click on it, drag it over to the Carveco software, and let it do that. Now, Carveco has now brought that image in, and it's asking you to set the model size. Right now that image is 660 inches high by 660 inches wide. And if I pick up my phone real quick and I go to my calculator and I go 660 divided by 12, that image is 55 feet by 55 feet. That's gigantic. Now, could we use it at that size? We could. But because it's so big, when we start to do certain processes with this software, it's really going to bog our computer down. It's just too much. So we're going to change it to 5. And when I do that, it'll change both numbers. Now, it just happens that it changed them both to 5 because it's a perfect square. But if it doesn't make your width 5, also it doesn't matter. Okay. We're going to make the origin of the lower left corner right here. Make sure it says image size. Make sure we're in inches. And as long as it has 5 right here in the height, we're good to go. We'll click OK. So now I'm going to maximize my Carveco window. So here's our image we brought in. We have lots and lots of icons, but don't let that freak you out. We're just going to use a couple. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go up to the vector word. It doesn't matter if your vector's at the top or it's down below somewhere. You'll have a row of words somewhere. Just find those words and click on vector. And then we have a flyout menu. We're going to go down to where it says bitmap to vector. Bitmap is a way of referring to an image. It's just a technical way of referring to an image. And bitmap to vector. Remember, we said some software calls them the lines we're going to create geometry. Some software calls it vector. And so we're going to use this bitmap to vector. And we're going to click on that. And we will get our bitmap to vector dialog box. And the first thing we want to do is reduce our colors. Notice how they spell color. Now, this software was developed by a gentleman that I know who was originally from England. His name was James Booth, and James Booth developed a software program that was then purchased by someone, and they originally called it ArtCam. And ArtCam was then purchased by Autodesk, which makes AutoCAD. And then it was later purchased back by a group in England, and they changed the name to Carveco. And so that's probably why we have the spelling of color like that. It has some British origins. So we're going to click on where it says Reduce Colors. And as you look along the bottom, even though we selected a black and white image, it has quite a few colors. And we want to reduce these colors down to 2. And we're going to grab this little bar right here. We're going to move it all the way to the left and down to 2. Notice the current image is 250, colors is 255. We want to make it 2. It's down to black and white. It doesn't matter if the black is on top or the white is on top. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to click Apply. Okay. So I've now reduced my colors down to 2. And we're going to scroll down here. And I can even make this a little bigger if I want. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to make sure it's checked only at Create Boundary. We don't want to create a center line. Then we have speckle size. Notice how you can see our image is just a little bit jagged now. I'm going to bump this up to 5 because I don't want to follow those lines exactly. I want to create a little bit of a smoother line. Okay. Now, the other thing on our image is we have some corners and we have curves. And so the next category is smoothness. Now, if we read what smoothness says, it says this value determines how smooth the curves which outline the primary color area are. Low values will create more straight lines and a more geometric look. So if I had like nothing but squares or rectangles or straight lines of some sort, we would want to put in a low value like 1. And while higher values will try to keep the curve smooth. So because I have some sharp corners and I have some curves, I'm going to try 75. And I'm going to click Create. Now if I turn my image down, You can see that worked great. I have nice sharp corners and I have nice smooth curves. Now if it didn't work, maybe I'd go down to 50. And so you have to experiment a little bit. And you can also see, because I used one, it didn't follow my lines exactly. It kind of extrapolated. It made them close, but not exact. But it really looks nice. So I'm going to call that good enough. Now, what you have to be careful of is not to create that or click that create vectors more than once. Let's say I didn't like the way it turned out. I would go up here to undo. I would remove them. I'd go back to here, and maybe 50 is what I wanted. I create that. I turn my image down, and you notice 50 works great also. Both of them work wonderfully. Okay, so, but if it doesn't work right, you don't just change your numbers and click again. You go to the undo your vectors, or decreate them, uncreate them, and then change your numbers, and then create them. So we've created everything we need. We're going to click this little X right here and remove that. And I'm going to click outside of the vectors so they go black. I'm going to left click and I'm going to get rid of that. I don't need that. And so I've now created my vectors, or my geometry, from my image. So the first thing I want to do is go up to File, go to Save As, click on Desktop. I want to save this Carveco model as Celtic Weave. And I'm going to click on Desktop and click Save. So if I make it smaller, I can now see here is my Carveco file. Notice there's a C right next to it, but notice down at the bottom it's celticweave.art. So that extension is the type of file it is. For some reason, when the company in England bought back ArtCam from Autodesk and changed the name to Carveco, they did not change the extension name from Art or ArtCam. They probably ought to change it to Carve, .carve, so it's easy to understand and stay consistent. But they didn't, so you just have to be mindful that this is your Carveco file. I'm going to go back now, and I'm going to left click and hold down and release and select my geometry again, because we need to export our vectors out of Carveco as a file that AutoCAD will recognize, because we're going to do some work in AutoCAD with our file. So I'm now going to go back up to Vector, and I'm going to go Export. And I'm going to click on Desktop, and I'm going to select DXF AC 1009. I could select DXF AutoCAD, but it'll create a file that is so large that it could bog your computer down. So we're going to create this DXF AC 1009. I'm going to call it Celtic Weave again. Oop, didn't spell weave right. There we go. I'm going to click Save. And then it say, hey, we're going to export, but what's the tolerance? Just select the 0.001 and click OK. So now if I make my Carveco smaller, here's my AutoCAD DXF file. So there's my three files, my image, my Carveco, and my AutoCAD DXF file. So I can now close this. It's asking me to want to save it. I don't. I already did. And I'm going to open up my internet again. I'm going to go back to my box.com, and I'm going to make it smaller. I'm going to drag my AutoCAD file over, my Carveco file over, and I already have my image, but I'll drag it in one more time. So I have all three of them. And that's how you create your vectors from your image using Carveco.